now to the, would say, the most sophisticated analysis, which is the CLV, or customer lifetime value measurement. I think you already know because because we talked about that in the introduction session, but here you have a detailed vision how you calculate it. So it's actually every client is an asset because the client generates past revenues and future revenues. But these customers have also costs. As we have seen, they have acquisition costs, the cost we have to pay to acquire these customers, and the loyalty or retention cost. And so schematically, you calculate it like that. And so we have the revenues of the past and of the present moment, and so now. But you have also the cost of the past and now, which are loyalty, retention cost, communication, acquisition cost. And so this gives you actually the past and actual benefit margin. So the revenues of the past and now minus the cost of the past of now and now give you the actual value of the customer or benefit of the customer. So this is easy to calculate. As with the RFM, you can do it with internal data, which comes from a customer base. This means that the past value is easy to calculate. You can also now determine the lifetime of this customer, because you know when the customer bought the first time and then the customer bought the last time until today. It is easy, again, I come back to the idea lost for good and always a share. It's easy to do that in the contractual context or lost for good context, but because you know the length of the contract. It's more difficult to do that in the always a share context. And so that is why in the always a share context, you will take over, you will use the survival or retention rate, which you have seen. So an average probability that these customers or this customer will be still active in the future. This can be done with some statistical models. For example, in SPSS, you have one model called survival analysis, which is nothing else than a regression analysis, in which you introduce predictive variables such as recency, frequency, monetary amount. So you could use even the RFM scores to explain and to predict the future activity of the customer. Naturally, it is a probability, so it's not the real value, but it helps you to predict what happens on the right side of this framework. That is, you will calculate then the probable lifetime of the future, what will be the future revenues, and what will be the future cost. And this brings you then to the lifetime profit, the future lifetime profit, and the future cost for this customer. And this is then the customer lifetime value, CLV. And then you can calculate on the aggregated level the customer equity. I will come to this concept more in detail in some instance, but know that the sum of all customer lifetime values of all individual customers in the database on the portfolio brings you to customer equity, which is the overall value of all CLVs in the database. And schematically, you see here again, CLV is thus the cumulated past and expected future profits by client. So you only take the past revenues, the sum of the past revenues, plus the sum of the future revenues, minus the cost, and so acquisition cost, minus the past loyalty or retention cost, minus the future retention cost. And so it's nothing else than a revenue cost analysis of the past and the future, which brings you actually, to say it in easy words, to the overall lifetime benefits a customer realizes in the past and in the future. And you can see this in the following example. For example, you have a customer 1. He realizes a profit of $100 per month, and he is active since 10 years. So his lifetime duration is 10 years. And his survival probability or retention probability is 50% to stay another 10 years. And so you would calculate the value of this customer would be for the past 10 years multiplied by $100 benefit multiplied by 12 months, because he buys every month. So we would have $12,000 for the past value. And you would calculate for the future the same. So we consider that his benefit is stable. $100 multiplied by 12 over the next 10 years. But we have to discount it by the 50% retention probability. And so he will realize something like 6,000 euros in the future. And the sum, the over lifetime value would be 12,000 plus 6,000. And so $18,000. And so this would be the calculation of this customer, of his customer lifetime value. So of the past and the future. But this model is really simplistic, because it only considers the activity of the customer. But a realistic customer lifetime value model should also integrate probabilities of purchase amount, because we consider here that the purchase amounts are stable, and also purchase frequency. Perhaps he will buy 50 times a year, perhaps he will buy only 5 times a year, we never know. That is why I told you we need to calculate the future based on past indicators. And for example, a survival analysis with the RFM score is a good mean to calculate the future. You can also integrate variables such as life cycles. So you know that, for example, if you use a variable about the CSP, social demographical category, for example, a student compared to a senior, you know that the survival probability is higher for the student because they are younger, but also the potential for the future is higher than for a senior, because they have an increasing tendency of revenues, whereas seniors have a decreasing tendency of revenues. And so this would be another proxy variable to approximate the future value of the customer. How the pattern of a loyal client, of a client, for example, in the mobile phone sector. And so in the beginning, he does not generate revenue, so these are the acquisition costs. But then you have the basic profit. And so he pays every month a stable amount of money to the provider. And so this is the base profit. But with the time, you see here, the sales, the cost of administration will also increase. So here's a potential of cost reduction, because you know the customer lifetime value is the difference between the revenues and the cost. So the lower the cost, the higher will be the CLV. So with the time, the customer will know the brand and he needs less help to buy or to manage autonomously his products. For example, if you know well a brand, you don't have to call the after-sales service because you know you can manage everything on your own. Right? Let's take the example of Air France. If you have a problem, a luggage problem, in the beginning you probably will contact the telephone the company, or by a real counter at the airport. So then Air France have to pay money to these providers to help you. So these are costs. But with the time, when you're long-term customers, you will learn that it's perhaps easier to deposit your claim, your complaint on the platform, on the website. The website is completely self-managed, so it's actually, there's no labor cost for the firm. So there's a big potential of labor economies to increase the customer lifetime. And so this is the potential of cost reduction. There might be also, or loyal customers might also buy more frequently or more recently. And so there's a potential also, if you increase, if you interact with the customer, and if you create a preference for your brand for the customers, he might buy more in your brand than he will do in other brands. And so we have a potential of increased purchase frequencies. And if the customers are satisfied, if they like your brand, they might do positive word of mouth. So you will also have something like a customer referral value. So the more the customer talks positively about your brand, the higher will be the value of the customer, because you will do communication, or you will just do communication for your brand for free, without that you have to pay any money. So this is actually the profit related to referrals. So if you take the example of TripAdvisor or Amazon, if customers are doing positive word of mouth for your brand on Amazon platform, this will actually give incentives to other customers to buy your brand. So these would be sales related to positive word of mouth of the customer. And this can be quantified also in the CLV concept. And finally, you have potentially on the highest, the more customers are loyal, the more they lose the reality of competition. In other words, they will look less to competitors' offers. This is called resistance to counter persuasion, which means that customers look less to competitors' offers, and they're locked somewhere in the focal brand offers. And thus, the less you know, the less you compare, the less you will become price sensitive. So they are ready to pay higher prices because they see that the quality of the relationship is so satisfying that actually the price becomes less important for him as a choice criteria. So long-term relationships also enable customers to have higher, lower price sensitivity. This is summarized here. So loyal customers will increase the spending over time. It costs less to serve them, related to lower administration costs. They generate positive word of mouth advertising and referrals. They become less price sensitive than new customers, and they are ready to pay a premium price compared to short-term customers. Take into account what they bring in the future in terms of referrals, in terms of cost economies, in terms of saving in communication, in terms of word of mouth. So all this should be considered. There's a question: why do loyal customers cost less than non-loyal customers or short-term customers? This is actually here. This is what I explained. Let's take another example. I said, for example, you can take the example of Amazon. When you buy in the beginning, you don't know why or how you can do a complaint. So you will probably call Amazon and they will spend your time how to resolve your problem. So this costs money. So let's say 1 hour of our Amazon advisor costs 100 euro. So it will cost, it's a fictive number. So in order to make it simple, so Amazon has to pay, whenever an advisor is interacting with the customer, has to pay 100 euros. In the beginning, and customers will probably use a lot of these human advisors because they don't really know about the brand. How should they react in case of problems? So it costs 100 euro for every interaction. But with the time, customers will learn that there are other means of communication. For example, chat rooms or a platform. So they might express their complaints on a platform or in a chat room. On the platform, there's basically no cost, or there only cost of the servers or the cost of the chatbot. These are something like 1 cent per interaction. So you could decrease 100 euro employee cost to 1 cent of interactional cost for a chatbot or a platform. Because customers learn, the longer they're in the relationship, the more they will learn how they can self-manage things in case of problems. So they cost less because they know how the brand works and don't do any useless interaction. So it means actually, I would not say useless, but it means that actually, as they know the brand, as they know how to buy, where to manage things in case of problems, therefore they know exactly useless. They exactly interact with the brand. We can take another example. Your students at TSM. So I don't know how many years you have been studying at TSM, but those who might started 2 years ago in a L3, so the first year of the bachelor, they know how the university works. So when you need some information, when you need, for example, a certificate of study, you know that you can have it on a platform, you can print it out on your own with your student account, so you self-manage everything. Now, after 3 years, because you know how the university works. As a new student, you did not know that. And so you probably went to the secretaries and asked her how to print these certificates. So this means time. So whenever the secretary interacts with you, it costs time and money. And therefore, in the beginning of the relationship, it costs a lot of time. But now you're probably able to do it on your own. So that is why the cost per student will decrease, because you can self-manage a lot of things. So this means actually customers know more the brand knows more the customer, and yeah, this reduces useless interactions. This clearer now? Okay, perfect. So this is actually what you have to integrate into customer lifetime value calculation. It's complicated. That is why you need to do this type of calculations. You need mathematicians and statistical analysts. These are the data scientists. So when you hear today firms are searching for data scientists, these are actually the guys who will create these statistical models by using statistical softwares going beyond of SPSS. This is done with mathematical software. This is actualized whenever a transaction happens. So for example, if you come back here to our scheme, the customer buys. Actually, the values is updated. A customer is doing word of mouth. The value is updated. And so CLV is a dynamic concept. It changes whenever there is a transaction with a brand.